Live from New Delhi, you're watching DD India News Hour, India's voice to the world. I'm Abhishek Mahajan, coming up in the next hour. India slams Pakistan PM Shehbaz Sharif at the UNGA for glorifying terrorism, reiterates that India will make no distinction between terrorists and their sponsors.
This assembly witnessed absurd theatrics in the morning from the Prime Minister of Pakistan, who once again glorified terrorism that is so central to their foreign policy.
India's External Affairs Minister Dr. Jaishankar called for adherence to international law at BRICS foreign ministers in New York to address UN General Assembly today. Big boost to India's telecom sector as PM Modi inaugurates fully indigenous 4G network. UN sanctions on Iran loom after UN Security Council rejects last-ditch effort to delay reimposition of sanctions over its nuclear program. Our top story, India dismissed Pakistan Prime Minister Shehbaz Sharif's remarks at the UN General Assembly as absurd theatrics, recalling that Islamabad had pleaded for a ceasefire during Operation Sindoor. Exercising the right of reply of India on Pakistan PM Shehbaz Sharif's speech, First Secretary in India's permanent mission to the UN, Patel Gehlot, rejected Pakistan PM's account of the May conflict, noting that Pakistan's threats ended only after Indian forces struck multiple Pakistani air bases on 10th May.
The Prime Minister of Pakistan also advanced a bizarre account of the recent conflict with India. The record on this matter is clear. Till 9th May, Pakistan was threatening more attacks on India. But on 10th May, its military pleaded with us directly for a cessation to the fighting. The intervening event was the destruction caused to multiple Pakistani air bases by Indian forces. The pictures of that damage are, of course, publicly accessible. If destroyed runways and burnt out hangars look like victory, as the Prime Minister claimed, Pakistan is welcome to enjoy it.
India firmly condemned Pakistan, saying it has made terrorism and the glorification of terrorists an essential part of its foreign policy. The Indian envoy recalled that Pakistan had blocked accountability for a Pakistani-sponsored terror outfit earlier this year at the UN Security Council.
This is the very same Pakistan which, at the UN Security Council on 25th April 2025, shielded the resistance front, a Pakistani-sponsored terror outfit, from the responsibility of carrying out the barbaric massacre of tourists in the Indian Union territory of Jammu and Kashmir. Mr. President, a country long steeped in the tradition of deploying and exporting terrorism has no shame in advancing the most ludicrous narratives to that end.
And India's representative exposed the lies of Pakistani PM Shehbaz Sharif and suggested that if Pakistan is actually serious about fighting terrorism, it should hand over all terrorists to India.
As in the past, Pakistan is responsible for a terrorist attack on innocent civilians in India. We have exercised the right to defend our people against such actions and have brought the organizers and perpetrators to justice. The Pakistani Prime Minister has spoken about wanting peace with India. If he is indeed sincere, the pathway is clear. Pakistan must immediately shut down all terrorist camps and hand over to us terrorists wanted in India.
Reaffirming India's long-standing position, the Indian envoy stressed that all outstanding issues with Pakistan must be resolved bilaterally, leaving no room for any third party.
Mr. President, India and Pakistan have long agreed that any outstanding issue between them will be addressed bilaterally. There is no room for any third party in that regard. This is our long-standing national position.
And concluding with India's firm message on terrorism, the Indian envoy said there must be zero tolerance for terrorism and India will never bow to nuclear threats.
Where terrorism is concerned, we are making it clear that there will be no distinction between the terrorists and their sponsors. Both will be held accountable. Nor will we allow terrorism to be practiced under the cover of a nuclear blackmail. India will never bow to such threats. India's message to the world is clear. There must be zero tolerance for terrorism.
All right, we are joined by DD India's Akshay Dongre to talk more on this. Akshay, India reiterates its red lines against terrorism. No distinction between terrorists and their sponsors. Tell us, how is India reinforcing this position at the UN?
Well, that statement in itself is a reinforcement, Abhishek, because we have in black and white said that there will be no red lines, which means that it's not just the ground workers who are holding the guns and killing the people who are responsible or who are terrorists. It's also the people who are funding them, who are giving them the guns, who are putting all of this indoctrination in their head. So that is one thing as far as the situation is concerned, and the statement that has been given by the Indian side that there will be no differentiation made when it comes to the ones who are killing people and the ones who are enabling them. So that is a very stern message to the people and to the state actors as well as non-state actors both at the same time. So any kind of terror activity will not be seen only being executed by the terrorists on the ground, but also the terrorists who are funding them, who are protecting them, who are harboring them, who are making them fundamentalist. The terror infrastructure comprises in all of them, and that is what India had demonstrated during the strikes inside Pakistan and POK. That it's not just the terrorists who will be killed if there is a terror attack, but the terror infrastructure will be demolished. So in a way, it's once again a message to the enablers of terrorism that includes the state of Pakistan and the Pakistani military along with the intelligence that has been protecting these terror groups. So if there is a terror attack and of the past terror attacks, it's not just the terrorists who are responsible for this, but also the state and non-state actors. Back to you.
Right. Also, Akshay, External Affairs Minister Dr. Jaishankar makes a case for multilateralism and platforms like BRICS ahead of his address at the UNGA. What message is India sending through this?
Well, there was a meeting, Abhishek, between the foreign ministers of the BRICS nations that was hosted by Dr. Jaishankar. And in that meeting, one thing was reiterated, and that was a meeting that was taking place on the sidelines of the UNGA, that multilateralism is the way forward. India has been a party that has always echoed the voice of diplomacy, the dialogue. Even after the independence, when India was not such a big economy, even at that time we took a stand and we started the entire non-alignment movement along with a few other countries that in fact grew to a much larger bloc than either the NATO or the Warsaw Pact. That was the Soviet and the American blocs. The NAM bloc was much bigger when it comes to the number of countries that had participated. So, India is speaking the voice of the global south. India is speaking the voice of development of these countries that are hit the first in case there is a conflict that escalates anywhere in the world. For example, the conflict in the Middle East or between Russia and Ukraine. The countries who get hit first were the global south countries, but the developing world or the underdeveloped countries. In terms of food security, in terms of other things, in terms of energy supplies. India has once again echoed the voice of sense. It has echoed the voice of peace and the voice of global south as well. That multilateralism will take the world forward in terms of development, and making blocks, dividing the world into fragments is only going to wreak havoc and destruction on the world.
Also, Akshay, last question before we leave you. If you look at the broader picture, bigger picture, what are India's key priorities at the 80th session of the UN General Assembly?
Well, first of all, is clearly, as it has been mentioned, terrorism is a threat to the entire humanity. It's a threat to world peace. It's a threat. In fact, there are several conflicts that have started because of terrorism. If you look at the current, incident of Hamas attack on Israel, that has led to a conflict that has killed so many innocent Palestinians and Israelis. That is one thing. Second is obviously the repercussions of the wars that is being faced by the global south, and the issues that the countries are facing in the global south. Like climate change, that is a separate thing. However, that's also on the agenda. But when it comes to war, it's food security, energy supplies, energy security, lives of the innocent, medical supplies, free flow of these basic necessities that has been disrupted by the war. So that also becomes one of the key priority. So it's terrorism, it's climate change, it's the ongoing conflicts, and it's peace that is the priority for India, even at this point. Despite facing so much threats and so many terror attacks by the world, India still echoes the voice of peace and sensibility.
Absolutely. All right, Akshay, we'll leave it at that. Thank you for your inputs. External Affairs Minister Dr. Jaishankar on Friday convened a high-level meeting of BRICS foreign ministers in New York, using the platform to underscore the bloc's crucial role in promoting multilateralism and advancing constructive global engagement at a time of international uncertainty. They also made a strong pitch for the comprehensive reform of the United Nations, especially the Security Council, reiterating support for the aspirations of India and Brazil to assume a larger role. Addressing the meeting, Dr. Jaishankar said, "When multilateralism is under stress, BRICS has stood firm as a strong voice of reason and constructive change." The minister underlined that BRICS must reinforce peace-building, dialogue, diplomacy and adherence to international law, particularly at a time when multilateralism is under stress. Calling for institutional reforms, Indian External Affairs Minister said BRICS must amplify its collective call for a comprehensive reform of the principal organs of the United Nations, especially the UN Security Council. On the economic front, Dr. Jaishankar warned against protectionist trends. He further emphasized that technology and innovation would define the next phase of BRICS cooperation. In a significant political endorsement, the ministers extended full support to India's upcoming BRICS chairship in 2026, when it will host the next BRICS summit. The BRICS foreign minister expressed strong condemnation of any acts of terrorism as criminal and unjustifiable, regardless of their motivation, whenever, wherever and by whomsoever committed. The leaders condemned in the strongest terms the terrorist attack in Jammu and Kashmir on 22nd April 2025. They reaffirmed their commitment to combating terrorism in all its forms and manifestations, including the cross-border movement of terrorists, terrorism financing and safe havens. The leaders urged to ensure zero tolerance for terrorism and reject double standards in countering terrorism. And Dr. Jaishankar also attended India, Brazil and South Africa ministers' meeting in New York on Friday. In a social media post, the Indian External Affairs Minister stated, and I quote him here, "IBSA made a strong call for the transformative reform of the UNSA. Discussions also on IPSA, Academic Forum, Maritime Exercise, Trust Fund and intra-IPSA trade," unquote. He further said IPSA will continue to meet frequently in future as well. Moving on, Palestine Ambassador to India Abdullah Abu Shawesh praised Indian government led by Prime Minister Modi and India's Foreign Ministry for helping the Palestinian people. Abu Shawesh said PM Modi is doing a great job and we won't interfere in India's bilateral relations with any other country.
India, under the chairmanship of the current Prime Minister, His Excellency Narendra Modi, is doing also great job to the Palestinian people. India is building right now more than one project. One of them is $1 million project, which is a hospital. India, under the chairmanship of the current Prime Minister, is also supporting the UNRWA. We are fully satisfied, and if there is something that we feel we want to discuss it with the Indian government, I can assure you all, the Indian Ministry of Foreign Affairs is 24-hour open to us as Palestinians, and we used to discuss with a full transparency with Indian government all the matters, the related matter between Palestine and India.
And the United States will revoke Colombian President Gustavo Petro's visa because he urged U.S. soldiers to disobey orders and incite violence in New York on Friday. In his speech to the global gathering on Tuesday, Petro also hit out at Trump, saying the U.S. leader was complicit in genocide in Gaza and called for criminal proceedings over U.S. missile attacks on suspected drug-running boats in Caribbean waters. Petro's social media profile on Friday showed he had reposted several video clips of himself speaking at a gathering of pro-Palestinian protesters in New York. The Colombian leader, a vocal opponent of Israel's conflict in Gaza, has suspended exports of coal to Israel. Time now for a very short break, but still to come on this edition of DD India News Hour. U.S. Supreme Court allows the Trump administration to freeze for now more than $4 billion in foreign assistance. North Korea's Kim calls for sharpening of nuclear shield and sword. And Union Petroleum Minister Hardeep Singh Puri announces natural gas discovery in the Andaman Basin.
Geopolitics and trade deals. Economic challenges amid development. Hard work and the path to prosperity. It's the economy always. Between walkers, money is what money does and says. Supply creates its own demand. Between the bulls pulls and bears tears. When supply chains globalization and India rises to the podium. We'll get you centered with the Economic Brief at 8 p.m. every Thursday on DD India.
Welcome back. You're watching DD India News Hour. I'm Abhishek Mahajan. Some more stories. The U.S. Supreme Court has allowed the Trump administration to freeze for now more than $4 billion in foreign assistance appropriated by Congress. The conservative-dominated court said upholding the president's authority to conduct foreign affairs appears to outweigh the potential harm faced by the intended recipients of the aid money. The court said its emergency order was not a final determination on the merits of the case, but allows for a temporary freeze on disbursement of the funds while the case continues in lower courts. President Trump, since taking office in January, has sought to exert greater control over federal spending. The Liberal justices said that the effect of the decision is to allow the executive to cease obligating $4 billion in funds that Congress appropriated for foreign aid and that will now never reach its intended recipients. And U.S. congressional Democrats released daily schedules belonging to the late financier and sex offender Jeffrey Epstein from 2014 to 2019. The schedule showed Epstein had plans to meet with Republican donors Elon Musk and Peter Thiel and conservative commentator Steve Bannon. The documents also showed Britain's Prince Andrew flew on Epstein's private jet in 2000. There were no accusations of any wrongdoing by Musk, Thiel, Bannon or Andrew in the documents released on Friday. The daily calendars do not indicate whether Epstein's meetings with Musk, Thiel and Bannon in fact took place. In an ex post on Friday referencing a news story about the documents release, Musk wrote, "This is false," quote unquote. FBI Director Kash Patel said in congressional testimony earlier this month that there was no credible information that Epstein trafficked women and underage girls to anyone but himself. Shifting focus, power is back in most parts of southeastern Mexico after a major blackout on Friday that left 2.3 million people without electricity. The outrage hit popular tourist areas like Cancun, Yucatan and Campeche and lasted about 6 hours. The problem started around 2 p.m. when a failure in a power line shut down 16 generators. Traffic lights stopped working, causing chaos on the roads. Many businesses had to close due to payments failures and phone service was down in some areas for over 2 hours. Although most places now have power again, nearly half of Cancun still had no electricity. Moving on, anger and grief erupted in Argentina as protesters set fire to barricades demanding justice for the live-stream torture and murder of 3 young victims. Tensions soared in Argentina after the shocking deaths of 3 young women whose torture and murder were live-streamed on social media. Victim Morena Verde and Brenda del Castillo, cousins aged 20 and 15-year-old Lara Gutierrez, were found buried in the yard of a house in a southern Buenos Aires suburb 5 days after going missing. In a result, protesters took to the streets, setting barricades ablaze. Now, Guinea's Supreme Court has confirmed the result of referendum to approve a new constitution in the junta-ruled country. The final tally is 89.38% in favor and 10.62% against, confirmed the provisional vote results announced on Tuesday evening. Opposition parties had called on voters to boycott last Sunday's referendum, accusing General Mamadi Doumbouya of using it to stay in power. Earlier on Friday, they had filed a request to the court to annul the result. Their request was rejected. The court's confirmation paves the way for elections to be held in December. The sign suggests that Doumbouya will run for the presidency despite an earlier promise that he would not. Moving on to some other updates, Russia and Ukraine have intensified drone attacks on each other's infrastructure. As per the State Service of Ukraine, Russia attacked by over 115 drones overnight. Meanwhile, Ukraine has stepped up drone attacks on Russian energy infrastructure in recent weeks, targeting refineries and export terminals to reduce Moscow's export revenues. The attacks have reduced Russian oil refining by almost a fifth on certain days. Now, North Korean leader Kim Jong-un has ordered all available resources of the region to be directed towards strengthening the country's nuclear program to sharpen the nuclear shield and sword and defend its sovereignty and security. Kim met his senior officials and scientists of nuclear weapons research institutes and described it as the country's essential top priority to further advance its nuclear response posture. North Korea has pursued nuclear weapons for decades, including clandestine uranium enrichment, enabling the production of up to 20 warheads each year. Moving on, a 5.6 magnitude earthquake struck northwest China's Gansu province on Saturday. Tremors were strongly felt in several areas with no casualties reported so far. However, some houses in the rural parts of Longshui County sustained damage. Local fire and rescue authorities quickly dispatched emergency teams and vehicles to assess the situation and assist affected residents. The full extent of the damage is still being determined. The authorities have launched a level 3 and level 4 emergency response and sent a work team to the region to strengthen relief efforts. Weather updates now. The death toll from severe tropical storm Bualoi rose to 11 in the Philippines on Saturday as the cyclone bore down on Vietnam. Bualoi battered small islands in the center of the Philippines on Friday, toppling trees and power pylons, ripping roofs of homes, unleashing floods and forcing 400,000 people to evacuate. Bualoi came on the heels of Super Typhoon Ragasa, which killed 14 people across the northern Philippines. The storm, originating in the South China Sea, is expected to reach the upper coast of Vietnam and weaken on Sunday and Monday. Thailand is also expected to experience heavy to very heavy rain from Sunday to Tuesday. While the impact of Typhoon Ragasa on China has subsided so far, authorities on Friday warned that rainfall will intensify again along the southern coast starting Saturday as Typhoon Bualoi, the 20th typhoon of the year, draws closer. China's National Meteorological Center continued to issue a blue alert for typhoons, saying Bualoi will affect southern waters and parts of southern China. Starting from September 28, heavy to torrential rains are expected to hit the western and southern parts of South China and southeastern part of southwest China's Yunnan province under the influence of Bualoi, with certain areas likely to see major rainstorms. Now, Prime Minister Narendra Modi laid the foundation stone and inaugurated multiple development projects in Odisha today. These projects span across telecommunications, railways, higher education, healthcare, skill development, rural housing sectors, among others. In a major boost to national communication infrastructure, Prime Minister Modi commissioned over 97,500 mobile 4G towers built with indigenous technology. These towers will connect around 26,700 unconnected villages in remote border and left-wing extremism-affected areas, serving over 20 lakh new subscribers. Prime Minister said that India is among the 5 countries in the world that possess completely indigenous technology to launch 4G services.
BSNL और उसके सहयोगियों की मेहनत से आज भारत ग्लोबल टेलीकॉम मैन्युफैक्चरिंग हब बनने की दिशा में आगे बढ़ रहा है। ये ओडिशा के लिए भी गर्व की बात है कि आज झारसुगुड़ा से BSNL के स्वदेशी 4G नेटवर्क का शुभारंभ हो रहा है, जिसमें करीब 1 लाख, दोस्तों देश के लिए गर्व होगा, 1 लाख 4G टावर है। ये टावर देश के दूरदराज के क्षेत्रों में कनेक्टिविटी की नई क्रांति लाने जा रहा है। 4G तकनीक के एक विस्तार से देश भर में 2 करोड़ से ज्यादा लोगों को सीधा लाभ मिलेगा।
And PM Modi also flagged off Amrit Bharat Express between Odisha and Gujarat, providing affordable and comfortable connectivity across states, supporting tourism, creating employment opportunities and linking key economic districts. PM also distributed approval orders to 50,000 beneficiaries under the Pradhan Mantri Antyodaya Greh Yojana. The scheme aims to provide pakka houses and financial support to vulnerable rural families. Earlier, PM Modi received a traditional welcome in Jharsuguda. Locals gathered in large number, featuring traditional performances that showcase the state's rich cultural heritage. All right, moving further, Union Petroleum Minister Hardeep Singh Puri has announced that natural gas has been discovered in the Andaman Basin, confirming the long-held belief that the Andaman Sea is rich in natural gas. Hardeep Puri informed that Oil India has found natural gas in Sri Vijayapuram 2 well at a distance of 9.20 nautical miles from the shoreline on the east coast of the Andaman Islands. The gas samples were tested and found to be 87% methane. Under the deepwater mission announced by PM Narendra Modi on Independence Day, large number of deepwater exploration wells are planned in our offshore basins in order to find new discoveries and exploit hydrocarbon reserves. Let's now take a look at other stories making news around the world. Comic book legend Stan Lee made a posthumous return to Los Angeles Comic Con on Friday, appearing as a life-size hologram, creating using archival materials and trained AI to greet fans. Attendees stepped into an enclosed booth to interact with the digital recreation of the late Marvel creator who died in 2018 at the age of 95. Luxembourg's local artist Jacques Schneider is commemorating the upcoming coronation of Luxembourg's new Grand Duke with a series of pop art portraits. The exhibition includes portraits of Grand Duke Henry and his heir, Prince Guillaume, incorporating colors symbolic of the royal family's heritage. Schneider created the portraits with the cooperation of the royal family. A giraffe calf was born at the Paris Zoological Park on 12 September, marking the first giraffe birth at the park in 6 years. The newborn female, weighing 44 kilograms, joins a group of 10 adult giraffes. The calf's name has not yet been revealed. The calf belongs to the Kordofan giraffe subspecies native to regions such as Sudan, Cameroon, Chad and the Central African Republic. Time now for another short break, but still to come on this edition of DD India News Hour, we'll be discussing new proposed UN sanctions on Iran with an expert after the break.
In today's episode, let's take a look at how people are trying to live and survive with these complex emerging challenges.
Floodwaters submerge their shelters, snakes move to higher ground, which often means closer to people's homes. When a Sarpa support member rescues a snake, it truly means that the snake is rescued, not captured or injured.
When the flowing water becomes muddy and full of sand, it's a sign that there has been heavy rain in the hills and a flood may be on its way. We need a lot of bamboo to make a changhar, from making the pillars, walls, the raised platform to a false ceiling.
The main problem is the climate crisis. We've just had a few very wet months, but nature needs all that rain. What we need to secure groundwater capacity is rain in the fall and winter.
Welcome back. You're watching DD India News Hour. I'm Abhishek Mahajan. Recap of our top stories. India slams Pakistan PM Shehbaz Sharif at the UNGA for glorifying terrorism, reiterates that India will make no distinction between terrorists and their sponsors. India's External Affairs Minister Dr. Jaishankar calls for adherence to international law at BRICS foreign ministers in New York to address UN General Assembly today. Big boost to India's telecom sector as PM Modi inaugurates fully indigenous 4G network. United Nations sanctions on Iran are set to be reimposed on Saturday after a Russian and Chinese Security Council resolution to delay them failed. The Russian and Chinese push to delay the return of sanctions on Iran failed at the 15-member UN Security Council after only 4 countries supported their draft resolution. All UN sanctions on Iran are due to return after European powers known as E3 triggered a 30-day process accusing Tehran of violating a 2015 deal meant to prevent it from developing a nuclear weapon. Iran denies seeking nuclear weapons. Diplomats had said the resolution to delay sanctions for 6 months had been unlikely to pass after last-ditch talks between Iran and Britain, France and Germany failed to break a deadlock. 9 countries voted no while 2 abstained. The sanctions would restore an arms embargo, a ban on uranium enrichment and reprocessing, a ban on activities with ballistic missiles capable of delivering nuclear weapons, a global asset freeze and travel bans on Iranian individuals and entities, and would also hit its energy sector. And on the sidelines of the UN General Assembly, Iranian President Masoud Pezeshkian criticized Washington for lacking sincerity in nuclear talks, including negotiations held before Israel's attack. Meanwhile, Iran's Foreign Minister Abbas Araghchi confirmed that a deal had been reached with the agency, but he dismissed the sanctions process as legally void, vowing Tehran would never bow to pressure while still leaving space for dialogue.
Iran will never bow to pressure. We respond only to respect. The choice is clear: escalation or diplomacy. The responsibility lies with those who broke their commitments and undermined international law. The Security Council just voted on a draft by China and Russia to give diplomacy another chance. Under US pressure, unfortunately, the Council refused. Iran's position on snapback is clear. It is illegal, void, and has no standing. The E3, having breached the deal, cannot claim significant non-performance. Resolution 2231 restrictions will expire permanently on 18 October 2025. Any attempt to revive or extend them is null and void.
All right, so United Nations sanctions on Iran are set to be reimposed after a Russian and Chinese Security Council resolution to delay them failed. What are the implications? What are the impacts? We'll talk about it. And for more perspective, we are joined by R. Swaminathan, former senior diplomat. Welcome, Ambassador. Appreciate you giving us your precious time. Is joining us live from Greater Noida. Ambassador Swaminathan, to begin with, the UN Security Council has rejected a last-minute attempt to delay the reimposition of sanctions on Iran over its nuclear program. Tell us, how have the nuclear negotiations with Iran evolved over the past few months? If you can give us the background.
Thank you very much. As you rightly said, what happened yesterday in New York was that Russia had tabled a resolution basically to postpone the implementation of the UN sanctions by another 6 months to give some more time for diplomacy. But then, as it happened, the resolution failed. There were 4 votes for it, 9 against it, and 2 abstentions. Therefore, the whole thing failed yesterday, which means that as of tonight, midnight today, New York time, the entire snapback mechanism, meaning the entire UN sanctions, will come back. You see, what had happened was, after the June 2025 attack by the US on the 3 nuclear installations in Iran, then what had happened was there was some talks between the foreign minister of Iran and also the E3, that is France, UK and Germany. But then the 3 conditions that these countries mentioned to Iran was: A, full cooperation with the IAEA; B, Iran has to tell them as to what is the status of the 408.6 kilogram of 60% highly enriched uranium. Third, they need to start the talks with the US in terms of further diplomatic solution. But as you know, what had happened was that Iran's foreign minister himself mentioned that the entire enriched uranium is now buried under the debris of the sites which US bombed. But of course, the Western intelligence agencies suspect that Iran had moved this entire enriched uranium beforehand. So there is a kind of a difference in terms of the perception on that. And also, additionally, because US had attacked Iran, I think the supreme leader of Iran, Mr. Ali Khamenei, had specifically said that there is no question of Iran starting its discussions with the US. And therefore, none of the conditions could be fulfilled. And therefore, what had happened was E3 had initiated this snapback provision on the 28th of August. Interestingly, if you see, the reason why they did it in August instead of in September was because in October, if they had introduced it in September, then the thing would have been come for consideration when Russia would have been the president of the UNSC Security Council in the month of October. And therefore, it was planned in a manner that it was done in end of August. And as you know that about a week or 10 days ago, there was a UN resolution which was adopted, which said that the snapback will come into effect. And yesterday, there was a last-minute ditch effort, as you mentioned, that Russia had put up a resolution which again got defeated. So as of midnight today, all the UN sanctions which were stopped because of the JCPOA will come back on Iran.
Right, Ambassador, like you said, with sanctions likely to be reimposed, what kind of impact do you foresee this having on Iran, specifically, both in terms of its economy and also regional posture?
One of the things that will eventually happen is that Iran, in any way, as you know, was under severe sanctions by US. And in fact, that sanctions was much more biting than any other sanctions before. Therefore, this sanction will, of course, add much more. But then it is also, I would say, a political and psychological setback for Iran. And in terms of it will further aggravate their economic position and social tension, and all those things will happen at this point of time. And in terms of oil, if you see, the sanctions, the present sanctions basically bring, things related to the nuclear related and missile related arms embargo and such of those things, and also certain financial transactions are going to come back now. But then, as you know, that this one does not bring any sanction. Even the original sanction never sanctioned the oil. But then what has happened is that US has imposed secondary sanctions, which means that any foreign entity which deals with Iran in terms of importing its oil, and also the financial institutions and the shippers, all of them will be coming under the secondary sanctions of US. And the fact that now the entire sanctions has come, it will become much more difficult for Iran to export its oil, and there will be a lot of operational costs and other things. So the economic situation of Iran will really go down because of this.
Also, Ambassador, one question that comes to the mind is, where does this leave the US and also the European powers who have had very different approaches to Iran's nuclear program?
You know, my sense is that after US bombed Iran, as you know, US President Trump proclaimed that their program is completely obliterated. But then the general assessment is perhaps it's not obliterated, but it has been decidedly set back for many years. And therefore, it seems that US perhaps is now looking at the whole situation that it is probably not the right time to give any concession to Iran and continue what US calls quote unquote maximum pressure. So that is what I think is the US view, which is somewhat, I would say, slightly different from the EU's perspective, the E3's perspective. And what they have been trying was to have a diplomatic solution so that Iran is able to come back to the original JCPOA mechanism, because in their perspective, to continue to have inspections on Iran is a much better way to check its nuclear program rather than not having Iran to have any cooperation with IAEA. So there is a difference, but at the end of the day, I think everybody got together, and of course, the result is that you have the sanctions reimposed on Iran.
Exactly. Ambassador, also, how is the nuclear issue shaping Iran's broader relationship with the West, particularly in terms of diplomacy, trust, and also future engagements?
You see, now Iran had made clearly that if the snapback were to be imposed, then E3 will not have any locus standi in terms of its nuclear-related aspects in terms of discussion. So one would expect that Iran to have a very maximalist position in terms of vis-a-vis the US and the Western countries in general. But at the same time, the fact is that Russia and China are the ones who had supported and put a resolution, which would mean that the relations of Iran, which is already, I would say, quite substantive with reference to Russia as well as China, will further improve. And also, I would say, you know, if you see the regional countries in Gulf countries, they all in the recent past have improved their relations, including Saudi Arabia. And the policy that they were adopting was that it is better to have a good relations with Iran rather than have a negative relations, and that had paid some kind of dividends to them in the last many years. And therefore, I would say that perhaps that kind of a thing would still continue. If you remember in the last summit in Doha, which happened immediately after, soon after Israel attacked Doha, and in that meeting of the Arab and Islamic countries meeting, Iran also participated in full measure. So I would expect that this relations also perhaps to strengthen further.
Ambassador, also very quickly, I'm very curious to know about India. Will there be any impact on India too?
You see, we really do not, of course, we have a civilization relationship with Iran. And because, as you know, that our Prime Minister went to Iran in 2015, if I remember right, when we had the Chabahar agreement. So we do have a major relationship with Iran. Having said that, our economic relationship with Iran has not been very big, except, I suppose, our involvement with Chabahar Airport. Our bilateral trade is perhaps somewhere in the region of $2 billion. We have virtually stopped buying oil from Iran. So as such, there will not be impact on energy and other aspects. But in terms of this hopefully should not lead to any regional instability. That will be of a major concern to us. But then you see, like the general sense at least that I have is that Iran is not going to get out of NPT, but then it stop in cooperation with IAEA. But then you see the problem is that with such kind of a position, again Israel and Iran, or US for that matter, can use for attacking Iran later at some point of time, at the time of their choosing. That would destabilize. So in a sense, in a broader sense, it's a major setback for the region, and therefore to that extent, it is not good for us as well.
All right, Ambassador, thank you so much for sharing your insights and also helping and making us understand the complexities and also the global implications. Thank you for giving us your precious time.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Moving on, Bharat Sanchar Nigam Limited, BSNL, marks its silver jubilee with a 4G revolution made in Bharat. India marks a new digital milestone as Prime Minister Modi launched BSNL's fully indigenous 4G network developed with TCS, C-Dot and Tejas networks. With 97,500 towers set up in record time, 26,700 villages now have high-speed internet, empowering 2.2 crore citizens and paving the way for India's 5G-ready future. Let's now take a look at other stories making news. India's Union Minister Nitin Gadkari inaugurated Heartbeats Wildlife, Our Shared Future, a photography exhibition by renowned cardiac surgeon Dr. Ramakant Panda in New Delhi. Running until September 30th, the exhibit features over 200 wildlife photographs capturing India's rich biodiversity and highlighting conservation through art. India's Union Minister Mohan Yadav flagged off a bike rally in central Indian state of Madhya Pradesh on Saturday with the aim to promote road safety awareness. He distributed free helmets to riders, urging citizens to follow traffic rules and embrace safe riding habits. And Srinagar's State Disaster Response Force, which is SDRF, launched the Apada Sakhi initiative at Dal Lake to empower women as frontline responders during emergencies. Participants underwent intensive training in first aid, rescue operations, fire safety and evacuation drills. The program aims to establish a resilient community-based network of trained women responders in a region vulnerable to floods, earthquakes and landslides. All right, still to come on this edition of DD India News Hour. Indian para-athlete Deepti Jeevanji qualifies for the medal round at the World Para-Athletics Championships. And in football, Harry Kane fastest man to net 100 goals for Bayern Munich. Welcome back. You're watching DD India News Hour. I'm Abhishek Mahajan. Sports updates now. We'll start with World Para-Athletic Championships. Indian para-athlete Deepti Jeevanji qualified for the medal round in women's 400-meter T20 event of the World Para-Athletics Championships in New Delhi on Saturday. The 22-year-old athlete secured the first position in the second heat of round 1. She took 58.35 seconds, which is her season's best performance. According to the qualification rule, first 3 from each heat will qualify for the medal round, and the next 2 fastest runners will also advance to the finals. So, Mayerly Minda of Ecuador and Karina Paim of Portugal will compete with the above qualified players for the medals. All right, we'll go across to DD India's Narayan Singh. Has been covering this event. Hi Narayan, World Championships have started with a bang for India. For the host, Deepti Jeevanji qualifies for the medal round. How big is this achievement for India and for her?
Definitely, the way India started, Deepti Jeevanji winning in the heats, and she will be there for the medal event in the evening. All in all, we can say that big and historic event for India, considering the fact that if you talk about Abhishek, this event, it is the first time India is hosting the para event on such a large scale. If you take a look at number of the athletes, more than 1,000 athletes all across the world from over 100 countries are participating in it. In itself, a big achievement. And talking about the India's contingent, 73-member Indian contingent, the largest ever, is participating. And overall, we can say that it's the start of a new dawn in Indian para sports, because if you take a look, the kind of preparation the Sports Ministry and the Sports Authority of India has done, we can say it was on a large scale on the National Sports Day, the Sports Minister Mansukh Mandavia inaugurated the Mondo track at the JLN Stadium, which is one of the most advanced track which is used all over the world. If you take a look, right now only 24 Mondo tracks are there all over the world. And in the Paris Olympics too, the Mondo track was used in the Stade de France, where all the international athletes used that track, and is the favorite among the athletes, not only inside the JLN Stadium but outside too, in the training center. For the warm-up area also, a Mondo track has been laid out for the practice and warm-up for the athletes, so that they can get the real feeling when they go for the match, for the medal round. So this has been done also. We can say that the most advanced floodlights are there, so they can train in during the night time also. Overall, we can say that's a good chance to India to establish themselves on the world map. We have seen in the past the trajectory of the Indian para sports is on the right direction. It is an upward trajectory. If you take a look, India's performance in the Paralympics, right from the London, India won 1 medal in the London edition of the Paralympics. After that, 4 in Rio, and then Tokyo 19, and the 29 medals in the Paris Games. And same in the World Para-Athletic Championship too. India continuously winning more number of the medals with each passing edition. So this shows that the support of the government is there to the athletes, and our para-athletes also getting the equal recognition, equal prize money, and equal facilities, and equal, if you take a look, even when they get the Khel Ratna and the Arjuna Awards, there is the equal representation. That's why our athletes are getting, we can say, getting noticed, and they are reciprocating by giving medals to the country.
Also, Narayan, the largest ever Indian contingent at World Championship, like you said, and we did well in Paris, won 29 medals, and now a chance to show the world its power on home soil. How's the buzz in Delhi? How's the atmosphere for the big championships? People coming in big numbers to watch the championships?
Definitely, the buzz is big, as we know that all the international athletes, as I earlier mentioned, that the athletes from the 104 nations are here to participate, and the Paralympic champion, Para-Asian Games champions, all are there. Who won in the previous edition, they won gold medal, they are also there. We can say that it's as the PM Modi in his address on the opening ceremony said that it's the biggest platform for the inclusion in the society. So we can say that it is not only about the para games, but it's also about lifting the standard of the para sports in India. If you take a look at the JLN Stadium now, there is wonderful accessibility system and facilities for the athletes and everyone. If you take a look, the chief of the World Para-Athletic Body, Frisgard, said that the Indian government has invested for the future of the Indian sports, the way the Mondo track is we can laid out there. So he said that it's a big moment for the Indian sports and the international athletes. When we talk to them, they are saying the facilities are wonderful, the infra is world class. Right. So it shows that India is ready to host the mega events, and as India is planning to host the Commonwealth Games and also planning to host the 2036 Olympics. So it shows that India is going to be next, we can say that big powerhouse of the world sports.
Absolutely. We'll leave it at that. Thank you for the time being, Narayan. But yes, we'll keep taking updates from you. Defending champions India survived Pathum Nissanka's blistering 100 and some intense super over drama before beating Sri Lanka in a dead rubber to maintain their unbeaten run in the Asia Cup on Friday. Sri Lanka gave a good account of themselves and matched India's 202 runs for the loss of 5 wickets to force the super over after Nissanka smashed the first individual 100 of this year's tournament. However, Sri Lanka managed only 2 runs in the super over before losing both the wickets in 5 deliveries from Arshdeep Singh. India skipper Suryakumar Yadav took 3 runs from the first delivery to seal the victory. India have already secured the place in the Sunday's final against Pakistan. Football now. Hurricane scored twice to reach 100 goals for Bayern Munich as the German champions continued their perfect start to the Bundesliga season with a 4-0 win over Werder Bremen. Kane became the fastest man to net 100 goals in his 104th game for Bayern, breaking Cristiano Ronaldo and Erling Haaland joint record of reaching the milestone in their 105 matches. Bayern celebrated in style as a brace from Kane and goals from Jonathan Tah and Konrad Laimer saw them claim their 5th win in 5 league games. The England striker averages 2 goals a game in the current Bundesliga campaign, and the former Tottenham striker has 15 goals in 8 games across all competitions so far this season. All right, that's all we have in this edition of DD India News Hour. But do let us know your thoughts on the news of the day. For those on the go, you can get all the latest news and updates from India and across the world on DD India mobile app. The app is available on both Android and iOS platforms. Scan the QR code on the screen to download now. And we'll be back with more news as it breaks here on DD India. I'm Abhishek Mahajan. From all of us here in Delhi, thanks for watching DD India News Hour.